Dear students, today we consider our first lection, which calls Introduction to Philosophy, Part 1. Let's start with the origin and definition of the concept of philosophy. The concept of philosophy, according to legend, was invented by Pythagoras, the Greek philosopher which lived in the 6th century BC. The word philosophy has been derived from two ancient Greek words, philos, it means dear, loved, beloved, and sophis, means wise or learned. Philosophy literally means love to wisdom. Wisdom as such is the prerogative of the gods, and man's ability consists in love to wisdom, attraction to it. Philosophy is a special form of human mental activity aimed at a comprehensive rational understanding of the world and human being in it. Philosophy is a system of the most general theoretical views on the world, on the place of man in it, and understanding of a various form of man relationship to the world. There are three variants of answering the question about the sources of the genesis of philosophy. Mythogenic conception, that is, philosophy arises from myth. Gnoseogenic conception, that is, philosophy emerges as a generalized system of knowledge about nature, that is, as physiology, from Greek physis, nature. Or gnoseo-mythogenic conception, that is, philosophy has three sources, myth, knowledge, and worldly wisdom. What is axial age? Axial age is a special period in which philosophy was emerged. The concept of axial age was proposed by German philosopher Karl Jaspers in the sense of a pivotal age characterizing the period of ancient history from about the 8th to the 3rd century BC, in which philosophical type of thinking emerged. In the 7th to 6th centuries BC, in the three great civilizations, ancient India, ancient China, and ancient Greece, a philosophical type of thinking emerges. This event was called the intellectual turn, which meant the formation of the ability to abstract thinking, and the emergence of a new type of worldview, a philosophical type of worldview. There are four historical types of worldview: mythological worldview, religious worldview, scientific worldview, and philosophical worldview. Let's consider their key characteristics. And we start from mythological type of worldview. The key characteristics of mythological type of worldview are anthropomorphism and sociomorphism. Anthropomorphism is the endowment of objects of nature and then of social phenomena with a human appearance and properties. There are two types of anthropomorphism. Explicit anthropomorphism, that is, the properties and appearance of a person are attributed to objects of nature. And implicit anthropomorphism, that is, any properties, actions of a person, his motives are attributed to natural phenomena, and at the same time an inhuman appearance is given, for example, an animal, a monster. And sociomorphism is the assimilation of relations between fictional creatures to relations between people in society. There are three world religions: Buddhism, 6th to 5th centuries BC, Christianity, 1st century AD, and Islam, 7th century AD. World religions unite people with a common faith, accepting them as their adepts, regardless of their ethnicity, gender, age, social stratum, language, etc. The dominant type of worldview of some believers is a religious type of worldview. The key characteristics of the religious type of worldview are the reliance on faith, the priority of knowledge gained through revelation or impersonal spiritual experience, or from sacred religious texts comparable with knowledge gained through the ordinary worldly, for example, scientific activity of the mind, so-called worldly knowledge. And the second characteristic is the attempt to answer the questions on ultimate foundation of being and all the existing. Ordinary worldly knowledge plays an additional confirmative role. If such knowledge contradicts the knowledge received through the revelation or the knowledge assimilated from sacred texts of the religion that a particular person confesses, then this worldly knowledge can in some cases be discarded by him. The key characteristics of the scientific type of worldview are striving for theoretical justification and logical evidence of the information presented. The second characteristic of scientific type of worldview is orientation. First of all, to the search for the answer, how does something work? That is, search for laws, universal principles of action, rather than what is it. And the third characteristic is answering to specific questions related to subject area of a particular branch of science, rather than an answer to fundamental questions about the ultimate foundations of being and the nature of everything that exists. Philosophy has in common with science the following characteristics: the intention to construct knowledge in a theoretical form, the intention to prove logically one's conclusions. In ancient Greece, all sciences coexisted syncretically in philosophy: mathematics, physics, astronomy, biology, meteorology, and others. Later, separate sciences were differentiated from philosophy. The first historical form of European science was natural philosophy, that is, philosophy of nature, speculative interpretation of nature. Let's consider difference between philosophy and science. Unlike scientific knowledge, which is claimed to be objective, impersonal from the point of view of the result obtained, philosophy is always personal, subjective in its nature. In philosophy, in contrast to science, there are many ideas, systems, views, pluralism of opinions. Philosophical knowledge always carries the imprint of personality, individual uniqueness, diversity, specificity of the style of philosophizing, and originality of the language used. Let's consider which place takes a philosopher. On the basis of the famous work of Plato, the Symposium. The position is this: no gods ensure wisdom or desire to be made wise, such they are already, nor does anyone else that is wise ensure it. Neither do the ignorant ensure wisdom, nor desire to be made wise. In this very point is ignorance distressing, when a person who is not comely or worthy or intelligent is satisfied with himself. The man who does not feel himself defective has no desire, for that thereof he feels no defect. Who then, dear Diotima, I asked, are the followers of wisdom if they are neither the wise nor the ignorant? Asked Socrates. Why, a child could tell by this time, Diotima answered, that they are the intermediate sort, and amongst these also is love. For wisdom has to do with the fairest things, and love is a love directed to that is fair, so that love must needs be a friend of wisdom, and as such must be between wise and ignorant. This again is a result for which he has to thank his origin. For while he comes of a wise and resourceful father, his mother is unwise and resourceless. Such, my good Socrates, is the nature of this spirit of Eros. Not all knowledge is wisdom. As Heraclitus said, much learning does not teach the mind. Wisdom consists in judging all things known to people, based on the recognition of their common eternal foundation, in order, having comprehended the essence of being, to find the universal in the specific, to substantiate and explain many phenomena. Indeed, these four historical types of worldview, that is, mythological, religious, scientific, and philosophical, are absolutizations. They never exist in their pure form. At each stage of the historical development of any civilization, and at each stage of the individual development of any person, all four types of worldview are in the mentality of a given civilization or in the mind of a given person in a special, each time unique proportion. Let's consider the main philosophical problems. There are four main philosophical problems or themes. The first one is the problem of the surrounding world, being the cosmos. The second is the problem of man, the meaning of man's existence in the world. The third is the problem of the relationship between man and the world, subject and object, the subjective and the objective, the ideal and the material. And the fourth is the problem of subject-subjective, interpersonal, social relations, consideration of a person in the world of people. The first problem of the surrounding world being the cosmos, is the search for the fundamental principle of all that exists. That is, the world in which we live, how did it arise, what are its past and future. The second problem of a man, is at the center of many ancient Eastern philosophical schools. The anthropological turn that took place in ancient Greek philosophy in the person of the Sophists and then Socrates recorded another eternal philosophical theme. Man is the measure of all things, from the point of view of Protagoras. Sophists refused to consider cosmological problems and turned to man. The cosmos, from the point of view of Socrates, is incomprehensible, and the lover of wisdom should realize that self-knowledge is the most important for a person. With this in mind, Hegel said of Socrates, the subject took upon himself the act of man making a decision. In the era of the early bourgeois revolutions, Descartes proclaimed, I think, therefore I am. Man is the crown of nature, from the point of view of Feuerbach, And this is the meaning of his philosophical anthropology. From the Marxist point of view, a person is a set of social relations, and within the framework of Western philosophy of the 20th century, various phenomena of human existence are analyzed: fear, despair, will, love, loneliness, etc. This is the problem, the thought problem about relationship between man and the world is the problem of the objective and the subjective, the ideal and the material, and their relationship. According to idealism, the primary ideal is the first principle, spirit, the absolute, the highest mind, God, and this first principle produces matter. Thus, spirit is primary or precedes matter. Matter is secondary, derived from spirit. According to materialism, matter is primary. Complicated matter or brain gives rise to consciousness. Thus, matter is primary, precedes spirit, and spirit or consciousness is secondary or derived from matter. The question of the relationship between spirit and matter is called the main question of philosophy. Let's consider variants of ontological answers to the main question of philosophy. It is customary to point the following options for an ontological solution to the main question of philosophy. The first is monism. There is only one first principle or substance according to monism. And there are two types of monism. Idealism, that is, this first principle is the ideal. And materialism, that is, this first principle is the material. And there are two kinds of idealism: objective idealism and subjective idealism. Besides monism, there are also dualism and pluralism. According to dualism, there are two equal first principles or substances, and according to pluralism, there are many first principles or substances. And now let's consider epistemological aspect of the main question of philosophy. The search for a solution to the problem of the relationship between man and the world throughout the history of philosophical thought initiated the formulation and specific solution of the problem of man's cognizability of the world, the correlation of opinion and knowledge, truth and error, possibilities and limits of cognition, penetrating into the mechanisms and secrets of human cognitive activity, searching for the criterion of the truth of our knowledge, etc. And there are three main variants of the epistemological answer to the main question of philosophy. Epistemological optimism is the first variant of answer, according to which a person is able to know the essence of things. The second position is agnosticism. A person is fundamentally incapable of knowing the essence of things. And finally, there is epistemological skepticism. It is doubtful that a person is able to know the essence of things. The last main problem in philosophy is the problem of subject-subjective or interpersonal social relations. In the context of this problem, there is a search for an ideal model of society, starting from the ideal state of Plato and Confucius, the city of the sun of Campanella, and ending with the Marxist model of a harmonious communist society. A search for agreement, mutual understanding is carried out. The ideals of tolerance, flexibility, communicative solutions to the all emerging to all emerging conflicts are becoming the leading philosophical topics of modern philosophical thought. Within the framework of solving the most diverse problems of a person immersed in society, the topic of hermeneutics, understanding of a person by a person, understanding of texts, a dialogue between the author of certain work with the reader, the addressee who sometimes through centuries penetrates into the innermost meaning of works and thanks to this creates personal meanings and secrets of perception. Let's consider the structure of philosophy according to Aristotle. Aristotle divides philosophy into three parts. The first one is theoretical or speculative philosophy. Speculative philosophy has as its purpose knowledge for the sake of knowledge. Practical philosophy has as its purpose knowledge for the sake of activity. And creative or poetic philosophy has as its purpose knowledge for the sake of creativity. Let's consider John Damascene's definition of philosophy. He gives 6 definitions of philosophy. Philosophy is the knowledge of the nature of things. Philosophy is the knowledge of things divine and human, that is, invisible and visible. Philosophy is thoughts about death, both arbitrary and natural. Philosophy is likening to God, for we become likened to God through wisdom, justice, righteousness, kindness, when we do good to our offenders. Philosophy is the art of the arts and the science of sciences. Through it, every art and every science is invented. And finally, philosophy is love for wisdom. According to Immanuel Kant, questions reflecting the types of man's attitude to the world are of fundamental importance for philosophy in its highest cosmic significance. What can I know? What should I do? What can I hope for? Paying a high tribute to theoretical reason, Kant, without hesitation, brings practical reason to the fore. What philosophy teaches? Philosophy embodies the idea of perfect wisdom and indicates the highest purposes of the human mind associated with moral ideals and values. Therefore, all 3 questions which embrace the purpose of philosophy could be reduced to the 4th. What is man? If there is a science, wrote Immanuel Kant, that is really necessary for a person, then this is the one that I teach, namely to take the place indicated to a person in the world in a proper way, and from which one can learn how one must be in order to be a human. According to Kant, an orientation towards a person and higher moral values gives philosophy dignity and intrinsic value. Let's consider 2 ways of structuring philosophy. There are 2 ways to structure philosophy. The first one is problem-oriented way, which leads to systematic philosophy, or division into philosophical disciplines. And the second way is chronological oriented way, which leads to history of philosophy, or division into chronological periods, epochs. Let's consider systematic philosophy and philosophical disciplines. The first philosophical discipline is ontology, that studies the problem of being, of the origins of all that exists, of the criteria, general principles, and laws of existence. The second discipline is epistemology or gnoseology, a philosophical discipline that studies the problems of the nature of knowledge and its possibilities, the relationship of knowledge to reality. This discipline identifies the conditions for its reliability and truth. Axiology, a philosophical discipline that studies the nature and structure of values, their place in reality, the relationship between values. Praxeology, a philosophical discipline that studies the practical relationship between man and the world, the activity of our spirit, goal setting, and the effectiveness of man. Philosophical anthropology, a philosophical discipline that studies man in his many-dimensional hypostases. Social philosophy, a philosophical discipline that describes the specific features of society, its dynamics and prospects, the logic of social processes, the meaning and purpose of human history. And now let's consider chronological way of structuring philosophy, that is history of philosophy and their periods. The first period is ancient philosophy. We can distinguish three different branches in ancient philosophy. Philosophy of ancient India from 15th to 12th centuries BC. Philosophy of ancient China from 11th to 10th centuries BC. And ancient philosophy, antiquity. Ancient philosophy of Greece and Rome from 7th to 6th century BC. The second period is Western European medieval philosophy. We can distinguish three periods in this big epoch. Apologetics from 2 to 4 centuries AD. Patristics from the 4th to 6th centuries AD. And scholasticism from 11th to 12th centuries AD. The third period is philosophy of the Renaissance from the 13th to 14th century and until the 16th or early 17th century. The fourth period is philosophy of modern time from the 16th century to the 18th century. The fifth period is philosophy of the Enlightenment from the 18th century. And sixth period is German classical philosophy or idealistic German philosophy. It is 1770 to 1850. And the last period, contemporary philosophy, from the end of 19th century until now. Thank you for your attention.